Hello, welcome to Model Kit Stuff and a first impressions video. Today we're looking at this huge set here from Miniart. So this is their repairing of Pz.Kpfw IV, the Ausf H version, and it's one of their big sets. So let me take you through what we're getting in this. It tells you here you get box contains model of a tank, 4 figures, gantry crane, 2 sleepers, repair table, step ladder, repairer tools, diorama base, metal chains and photo etched parts included. It also tells you that we've got a full interior kit for the tank, so which is handy because we're going to be working on the engine. You can see it there. It also means you can have all the hatches open and see what's going on inside. So it's a huge, huge build. It's going to have a lot of plastic in here. So the kit number is 36063, and effectively what Miniart have done is brought together elements from other kits that they've already produced to produce this diorama. So the base itself is from their aging country road diorama base, which in this shot they've cunningly covered up with all this aftermarket vegetation. You won't get this in the kit, so that you can't see that it's actually a muddy road under there. And there is originally in this diorama kit there is a wall, and they've very cleverly covered it up with the track for the gantry crane. So they've been very clever in what they've done. Now the Pz.Kpfw IV with interior kit is a kit in its own right. The gantry crane and a couple of guys with it is a kit in its own right. And the repair shop and figures with it is a kit in its own right. So you've got 4 different kits there that have all been brought together. I don't think you have the full content of the repair shop and the gantry crane kit, just the elements you need for this diorama. And you don't get the wall that would have come with the diorama base, for example. So I think it's a great idea, pulling together several kits to come up with something that really presents itself as a nice kit. So I'm a big fan of that idea. So let's have a look. The box itself is huge. That is just over 10 centimetres or 4 inches deep. And it's really quite heavy as well. And if we look at this side, we've got the usual information in Ukrainian, Russian and English. You've got health and safety information, tells you that it's 14 plus, and then we've got contact details and so on. The 2 sides of the box are the same, just replacing what's on the top, so it looks okay on a shelf of a shop. And then on this side we get the diorama base, which you can see there. It's a muddy road, and that little line there is where the wall would have been. We get a picture of the gantry crane, the repair shop and the tank. So yeah, and this tank is an initial production May 1943 version. So let's see what's inside the box. So I've unpacked the single bag that all of this came in and repacked the box. When I first got this, I needed to just check that nothing was damaged. Not that there's much you can do about damaged parts. So as you can see, unpacked and repacked, the box is absolutely full to the gunnels with plastic. You've got more parts here than you can shake a stick at. I would dread to think what the count is, because you've got individual track links with individual track pins, 2 per link. So you're going to be here for a long time if you want to count the parts. Okay, so the instruction manual is 48 pages of A4 full colour instructions, all held together with staples. It's a good meaty document. And it tells us here on the front we've got another picture of the diorama. I think think that's the same picture but at a different angle than what's used on the box art. And it tells us that we've got box contents of a tank, a Panzer IV, initial production May 1943, and it tells us the division there as well. It tells us we get 4 figures, gantry crane, repair table, sleepers, repair tools, and a diorama base. So just repeating what's on the front cover really, and of course we're in 1:35 scale. So general instructions, so obviously you might want to do something a little bit more. Starts as always with Miniart with paint instructions. So let's just have a quick look, because usually it's at the front and the back. At the back we've got images of the diorama, so we'll have a look at those in more detail. So we've only got one option when it comes to painting the tank. So unless you've got your own Panzer IV decals for this variant of tank that you can use, you're going to do this particular version. So it says 4th Panzer Division, summer 1944. And what we've got is a yellow base with a green and brown-red camouflage pattern. So you could mess around with the camouflage pattern, I guess. Do a little bit of research, see how much there is on this particular tank number. I think that's I-11 by the looks of it, and there's some form of Russian bear or something on there as well as the divisional marks. So that's our painting instructions. It's shouting out the decals and it's shouting out the paint numbers. Looks like you might have some options as well, so we might be able to do 2 variations of the same tank. So that's quite nice. So I'm going to try and skip through the instructions perhaps a little bit quicker than I normally do in a first impressions, just because they're so big, and if we're not careful we're going to have a 3-hour video here. But we're starting off with a sprue map, and you can see here we've got multiples of some of the sprues, so 4 of those, wheels obviously. That all looks like the tank to me, and the decal sheet for it. A lot of decals on there, got to say, but some of those I'm guessing will be for shells and stuff. And we can see the sprue there with the Pioneer tools and bits and pieces for the tank. So all of those sprues look like tanks to me, with the exception of that's a workshop one. You've got some toolboxes there, and I have had those before in a kit. Then we've got the photo etch set that goes with it, with lots of little tools and wrenches and the bits for the toolboxes to make them open. Not quite sure what those are. And then we've got some of the photo etch parts for the tank, smoke discharge bases, some of the interior parts for mounting the shells, so on and so forth. Some photo etch chain, which is always welcome. And then our sprue map continues. So we've got more tank. All of these are ×2 across the top. So that's all tank. 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 Shells for inside the tank. Idler wheels for the tank. 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 My, how much plastic have we got in here? Right, where are we? Tank. 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 Tracks and tracks for the tank. That is also parts for the tank, the jacks and Pioneer tools and bits and pieces. Gantry crane, tool shop, gantry crane, tool shop, tool shop. chain, some plastic strip, which is to give us another one of those, the base of course, and then the 4 sprues for the 4 different figures. So in total that's 45 sprues of various different sizes, plus a base, plus some chain, and plus 22 sets of tracks and 4 sets of track pins. Okay, so we start the actual build with the tank and the tank interior, and I got to say I really like the way Miniart approach their tank hull construction. It's like being the actual engineer of the real thing. You've got a single piece for the base, and then you've got side pieces that go on later on. So we haven't got a bathtub which is oversized and in terms of thickness and maybe distorted and so on and so forth. You've actually got nice, decent sized plastic that you can work with. When you're doing interiors is really important. You can work on the sides and get into them really easily before you bring it all together. And you can see right from the start how busy we are with bulkheads and components going in. So really, really busy. And look at all the detail we've got there to paint up and weather. So as soon as you start weathering and painting this, that many hours of modelling fun that they've given us just exponentially increases. So this is not a small project by any stretch of the imagination. So they are giving us some paint colours as we work through the construction of this. You can see we've got 3 different shells, so there'll be hollow point armour piercing HE, I would imagine would be the shells that would be on there. And then we've got more interior parts, transmission. We've got individual decals there for the various controls, so that'll be oil pressure and speed and so on. Transmission going in, all complete, lots of shell storage. I mean, the seats are what, 4 parts? Very detailed. Individual parts for all the various different hand controls. We've got pedals going in. Looks like we can see the springs on the back of the seat, which is lovely. Yeah, then we've got more shells going in the turret floor extension. We've got the piping, ductwork, some form of electrical boxes. Not quite sure what that is. Right, then we've got some alternative ways of building the tank. So I'm guessing that's to do with whether you want it open or removed or something like that. Basic assembly with disassembled engine compartment and pulled out engine. Right, so if you've got the engine disassembled, then obviously other things are uncoupled, so you need to build the model in a different way. So that's brilliant. Obviously, we're not taking the time to study these right now, but look how detailed these parts are. I mean, they could be the real thing in miniature, which of course is the aim. Then we're starting to work on the sides. And we've got all sorts of lovely detail there. If you ever want to get to grips with understanding a Panzer IV, build this model, because every individual little component is thought about. Stunning. Okay, sides are going on. We've got that looks like exterior panels. Yeah, so yeah, that's our front plate there. That looks like bulkhead to me, engine bulkhead. Only alternative tank assembly. So I guess that, yeah, that goes, okay, some form of filter. So it depends on how you're showing it, because that's your engine bay, I think. So yeah, there's some form of fan grill or something like that. which will be popped out if you're removing the engine, I would imagine. Wow. Then we've got all of these. Usually these are all moulded on. All these little lumps that you usually get underneath the Panther IV, all individual parts. And even with their individual hatch details like handles and viewing ports are separate for the hatches. Really nice. Then we're building up the fenders, the bit of drilling to do. Shells are going in. That looks like ammunition bags. Reconfirming the paint shout out for the shells. And then we've got the exhaust there and some of the exterior parts for the back of the tank. Quite a busy looking tank, the Panther IV actually, particularly this version with the spaced armour skirts. Then we're adding details like the support brackets, locking chains and bits and pieces. We've got interior details like an oil can and gas mask holder and stuff like that. It's really nice, isn't it? All the various different handles for the viewing ports, little toolbox of some type. They're usually moulded on as well, but the little tie-down points, they're actually two individual parts. I can only imagine how tiny they're going to be. Radio set there, giving us the colours. No decals for that, apparently. Then we are, that's building up the top deck, I think, by the looks of it, and the inside portion of the gun. More hatches going on, so it's interesting that we're building that up separately. We've got the jack block there, the aerial and base. Top going on, meeting with the lower hull. Filter system, got the tyres. They seem to have, if the picture's correct, they seem to have all the sidewall writing on, which is beautiful. Then we've got the fan assembly for the engine, which obviously you can have in the closed position or the open position, showing off the fans. That's nice. Having all this deck out is really quite nice. Then we've got some spare track links going on the front plate there. More photo etch chain. Just showing you how to build those up. And then the brackets to store them on. We're adding Pioneer tools, gun cleaning rods, and various bits and pieces at this point, spades and things. We've got options around the lights, it would seem. Option A, option B. Not quite sure. I can see a big difference other than the rotation of the bases. I guess you can have clear lens or you can have the cover on. So you could have one with the cover on and one with the cover missing and something like that, I guess. I guess we could do that. So photo etch for the fire extinguisher, the mounting bracket for it. We've got more tools, spare wheels, the S-hooks for towing, all of those sort of bits and pieces going on. Loads going on the top there. All of them needing to be painted individually, weathered individually before mounting. It will look awesome. Then we've got the springs. So we've got options there for open and closed on the track. So that might be nice. If it's in full service mode, they might be flipped up for inspecting of the track or the idler wheels and so on. And we can do the same with these flaps here. Loads of photo etch around the mounting of these tools. We've done all of that, and then we're getting to the wheels, and I like that because I never look forward to the wheels, and we're doing the wheels right at the back end of the build and then putting the track right at the back end of the build. So all of this will be painted up, then you can paint your wheels, slap them on, paint your tracks, slap it on. Brilliant. That's how I would build a tank, so I'm happy about that. Yeah, really good. Looks like we've got a lot of part components on the suspension system. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts on the suspension system. So that'll be nice and accurately detailed. Brackets for the spaced armour. The idea of the spaced armour to make the shell detonate before it actually gets to the tank. So we're on step 88 on page 28, and we're just starting the turret. And if the rest of the build is anything to go by, there is a huge amount of parts for us to consider. Anyway, we're building up a full interior for the turret, so I'm not going to go through this in detail, but all the interior parts are there. We're building up the gun there. It's nice to see we've got a turret base there with the right tread pattern on, and the frame looks all accurate from memory. Yeah, lots of equipment and bits and pieces going in. So again, you've got an opportunity to get all these parts chipped and worn and a little bit dirty. They get a lot of condensation and they get very grubby inside these tanks, so you can really go to town with it. Yeah, so we've got the fans and bits and pieces, headrests and stuff. Coupler being built up, as you'd expect from Miniart. Lots of individual components, really complex, but makes it really, really accurate. This, you know, if you're into your Panther 4s, this is going to be a labour of love. Beautiful. And we got the side hatches there. Again, multiple parts to replicate the hinges and the openings, and I dread to think how small some of these parts are. Then we've got the gun muzzle there, multiple parts for accuracy, which is nice to see. Plastic gun going in, but that's not a problem if you clean it up carefully and properly. Photo etch parts and bits and pieces for the smoke discharges. You're going to have to add some little cables underneath those, that they're not depicted. They're not. Usually they do a little star symbol and say you need some pipework here and you've got to supply it, but they haven't done that with that, but that will need adding on. That's the only thing so far I've seen that needed adding. Yeah, all sorts of clips going around the build of this armour, which is plastic, so it'll be interesting to see how thin that is. Right, we are on 128 steps to build the tank, less the engine. Okay, engine, step 1. Put the engine block together. I mean, it's a familiar engine if you build German vehicles. This is the Maybach engine. You'll see it fairly often. It was commonly used by the Germans. But as the tanks got bigger, the less useful the engine was. Okay, lots of detail again on here. Lots of timing belts and bits and pieces. And then we've got an alternative tank assembly with the engine. So if you want to have the engine mounted in the tank, that can also be done. But because they want you to, because they're expecting you to want to have it out because of the diorama, they've left this bit to the end. So as always, it's always worth getting familiar with your instructions before you start. Don't just start on page 1 and follow the instructions, because that can lead you down the wrong path if you're not careful. But yeah, you can see all of this plumbing going in, bits and pieces that we'll have had to have taken off or disconnect, uncouple in some way in the build that we've just gone through. So basically, yeah, and that's even affecting the upper superstructure. I guess that's because of having the engine bay closed. Interesting. Right, so just a few steps for that, and then we're on step 1 of the crane and accessories. So we start with the gantry crane, that's the top. We've got all sorts of ratchets and steel wheels. So we build that up. Along the side here we've got the toolboxes. Obviously you can arrange the tools as you wish, open and closed. And then you've got these girders, which are the track system for the gantry crane. And one of them gets placed on your base where the wall would be and covers up the area where the wall would be. And then the other one goes on a plastic strip as a base for that. So how we paint that up, we will have to have a look at. But yeah, real chain, that's nice to see. That'll really add to the realism. Looks like we've got 2 different diameters, a lifting chain and then an operating chain, the operating chain being smaller. Yeah, and then we've got jacks and bits and pieces, a plane. We've got a wooden beam, A-frame trellis, tool bench, another different type of tool holder, an anvil, little short step ladder, and there you can see the main components going onto the base. So you can see here, strip of plastic going in there to emulate what they've already got there. So it's a really clever way of reusing that base. You can see the tread pattern in there from it being a road. And that completes our build. Just 44 pages of that. Then we've got the painting instructions for the miniatures, and we've got colour chart for the miniatures. So there's quite a few flavours there. Quite a few colours there. You can tell it's nearly lunchtime, can't you? We've got Vallejo, Mr. Colour, AK Real Colour, Mission Models, Ammo by MIG, and Tamiya if you really want. And they use the same brands all the way through their different colour charts. So we have a main colour chart there and one just for the figures. And then we have some pictures of the completed diorama, and whoever made this did a terrific job of it. It looks outstanding. So some nice pictures of what that finished tank is going to look like. Obviously, you're going to have to source your own foliage and leaves and debris and bits and pieces. But what we can see is the exhaust system there is uncoupled. The engine is lifted out. Some guy there working on something. The girders are depicted as just being rusty steel. So I guess we'd do the same with the strip underneath it. Quite how they got them into the field, I am not sure. But anyway, interesting. And look how lovely that toolbox looks with painting it up and weathering it and so on. Really nice. They've got the toolbox there open on the back of the turret, which I think is a nice touch. Nothing in there. I'm not really sure what was kept in there. If you know what was stored in there, then I'd be interested to know. Was it indeed tools? I've never really thought about that. And then we've got the bench there. More pictures of the completed diorama, so a back view with the guy handling the quite dirty looking engine. Yeah, I think that is stunning. Let's have a look at some plastic. Okay, what we're going to do with the plastic is do it in the order I've packed it in the box, so I can unpack it in the same order that I need to repack it, if that makes sense. So we might be getting a mixture of tank parts and diorama parts as we go. And we're starting with what are clearly tank parts. And we've got turret parts here. And we've got detail on both sides, which is nice to see. Very finely moulded, nice and crisp. Got the coupler there, a couple of different mantles. So there will be some spare parts out of this. The shutter system, a lot of these parts you won't be able to identify because they break the assemblies down so much, but what I can tell you is we've got some very fine fastener detail on there. For flip on this side, this is the ejected side, so we've got ejector pin marks. So that's the bin, for example, bin lid for the turret, and we've got 4 ejector pin marks there that are going to have to be filled and what have you. So there's quite a bit of work there to clean that up. Same here, a lot of ejector pin marks that are slightly raised, so some real delicate sanding work to be done in there. So again, the amount of time you're spending on this increases, but look at that coupler ring. Look how thin that is. You have to be very careful removing that. Very, very careful. Yeah. Now that's inside of the coupler lid, and you've got a pad there that's got texture on. So that is really quite nice. Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. A tiny sprue which has got some more turret components on it, and these seem to be an alternative version to the one we've just seen. So we saw one of those, but it didn't have these in, which I guess those mate into. So that's some form of opening gun port or something like that, maybe. And again, with that, they've got some form of handle to them or something like that. That looks like. But they certainly look like some swap out parts. Okay, the next sprue, more tank parts, and we've got the 2 side pieces here. And this is the exterior surface, and there is so much detail crammed into there. It's beautiful. We've got some hatches, we've got top plate there, which correctly has the staggered openings, which is nice to see. We've got the exhaust, 2 side pieces, 2 end pieces, nicely done. We've got another top plate there, some pipe work, hose or something, and the bracket supports for the exhaust system. And then we've got interior detail, fastener heads and the inside lips. We do have a little bit of sink behind these brackets here, but there's no lip on here. We've got an ejector pin mark as well, so filling that and sanding that back's no issue at all. We've got ejector pin marks there, but they're going to be covered by components. So as always, with complex interiors, it's always worth checking where parts go before you spend time cleaning up ejector pins, just in case they get covered up anyway. Any decent model engineer will try and hide as many as they can. Lots of detail on there. Really nice. Okay, next sprue, we've got 2 of these, and this is dealing with mainly parts for the suspension system. We've got a couple of spare track links there. We seem to have some form of bracket of some type there. Not quite sure what they are. I mean, I'm doing this review with just my reading glasses on, so I can see there's something there, but I couldn't in a million years tell you what that is. Not a clue. It's small, that's what I can tell you it is. But yeah, the detail on there is lovely. Everything is so crisp. You know, I'm not seeing much in the way of cleanup other than those ejector pin marks on the larger items. There's a little bit of seam on this, whatever that might be. Again, another double sprue. This time we've got the idler wheel, so it's a two-part idler wheel. Seems to have all the fastener detail that you'd want on, and the rim around it is nicely depicted. And we've got fastener detail on what would be the outward facing edge once the wheel's assembled. So that all looks nice. And then we have our sprue with the toolboxes on. So we've got two toolboxes in this. We've got this one here, which is clearly open and has it gets built up from these side pieces, and then it has some photo etch on it to show the hinge on the outside. And then you've got, and you can see the plastic part that goes with it there. And then you've got a closed version, which again is made up from some plastic components, but you don't need the photo etch on the hinges, they're moulded on. So, as I seem to remember, we've got all sorts of tools there. There's no teeth on the file though. I don't know what's going on there. I'm joking. Another double sprue back to the tank. We've got some shells there. These are doubled up on a base, so I guess we'll only see the tops of the shells. So that's quite a good way of handling that. Lots and lots of tiny interior parts. Couldn't tell you what almost any of them are. There's a spring on that one, which is really nicely depicted. We've got some gas mask bottles there, and there is nice rendering of the material on these shell bags here. Very nice. That's an electrical box. So we might need to do some research on electrical cabling, because I didn't see that there was any instruction on that, but there must be something coming out of it. So we have two of those, I think. So I'm not going to open this because the parts are so delicate, but we have 4 sprues of track pins. And what you do is you cut each section off, put them in, then cut them off, and you've got working tracks. According to the instructions. 2, 4, got 6 sprues here of shells. Now they are different. So each sprue has a different type of shell on them. So you've got armor piercing, high explosive, and hollow tip. So you've got a variety of shells, as we saw in the instructions. So you'll have to be careful not to mix them up. But they're nicely moulded. The gates are on the shell bodies, so you've not got any cleanup on the top, which is good. And if you paint them up in brass and the various different tip colours, they will look really nice. So we've got tank tools here, all sorts of tools, spanners and hatchets and wire cutters, fire extinguisher, which actually has a moulded on frame, and we saw photo etch being used, so that's good. That gives you options if you don't like using the photo etch. It's got starter handles and all sorts of stuff. I think we're going to have some spares in here as well, and we have some very nicely done plastic tool clips. And again, you paint them up and there's nothing wrong with those. They're slightly thicker than the photo etch ones, but they're going to look okay. So you do have some good options. It's not a case of the photo etch is needed to replace stuff that doesn't look right. Plastic parts are good. So this is one of our mud guards, and the detail is absolutely beautiful. Got a nice check pattern all the way across that, loads of fastened detail, loads of little points for mounting various things. The detail is absolutely stunning. The brackets are very nicely done, very crisp. And then when we look at the underside, we've got all this detail again. Absolutely stunning. You're not going to see lots of this, but all the little fasteners are there. There's a couple of ejector pin marks there for cleaning up, but these will be hidden ultimately. So more parts to decorate our tank. We appear to have individual tank cleaning rods here, so that might be a nice option for the diorama. We could have it assembled or stacked up, ready to be used, or something like that. That's a really nice little feature, actually. Crowbar, jack, the various different towing hooks, and we have the eyes for the steel towing cables. I don't think we have the cable, however. I think we have to supply that ourselves. More starter handles. So I don't know if this is something that comes out of a different set, maybe. Wheels, we've got 4 sprues of these, and as we saw in the instructions, we've got very delicate lettering on the side walls. It's absolutely stunning. The caps are nicely done, the hubcaps. The springs are really crisp and clean and individual looking. Wow. It's just lovely. Just really, really, really nice. Now, interestingly, we've got 2 of these sprues, which means we've actually got 2 trestle tables. So that gives us some even more options in the diorama. And then we've got some nicely textured wood strip for building up our big table. Yeah, very nicely done. The trestle is less textured, but does have fastener detail. But all the wood is lovely. There's even a trowel, like a bricklaying trowel. So I guess that's from a set for someone doing bricklaying rather than repairing a tank, but very, very nice. The little step ladder comes on a sprue of its own. There is no wood texturing that I can see on this at all. It's all totally smooth as far as I can see, but you can give it a scratch with a file and put some wood texture in yourself, and when we come to do it we'll probably do that. But that's our step ladder to give us access to any part of the tank we wish. Some of the exterior plates now. Got some very nice captive bolt detail on there, and yeah, no sink or anything. A little bit of sink on that part there, but it's minor. I think there's something being glued on there, so I think that gets glued on there, so I don't think it's an issue at all. And that seems to glue onto there, and right, not sure is where I am with that. We have two sprues that make up beams, and they've got a really nice fine wood texture on them. So you can put those together, and they're great for resting things on. So you could have the engine resting on the blocks, or you could have the exhaust that they've taken off resting on the blocks. So loads of options, loads of options. Track building jig. Got two of these sprues, loads and loads and loads of tiny parts, which include the lamps there, which are nicely done. Most of the rest of it, I couldn't tell you what it was in its own right. Clearly we've got some parts there for the wheels, and the spare wheels are there. A bit of flash on some of these, but nothing major. And then we've got those little hooks, which I said they're going to be tiny, and they're actually not as small as I imagined they'd be. And we've got smoke discharges there that are loaded and empty, so that's a nice touch. Two of those. So next we have our figures, and I'm a little surprised to see that we actually have a tool roll there as well. So I didn't see that in the instructions or the diorama. So again, more options. We've got a little roll there with tools in it. And we've got, this is the crouching figure. So maybe that was on the ground and I just didn't spot it. So crouching figure. He's a little flashy, so they've probably produced a number of them. He's squat down looking at something. Look at his hand pose. Really nice. As Gavin will tell you, the fit of Miniart figures can be a challenge, but I think they do a really good job of the look of them and the render of them. So we've got a guy here, looks like he's pulling on the chains. Then we've got a guy hammering on the anvil. He's got a pinny on, and there's a wood block there for the anvil to go on. And then we've got another guy who appears to have his hands in that pose, so leaning on something, peering in maybe. And the plastic keeps coming. We've got the engine block here, which is really nicely done. I've seen several of these engines over the years, but I've seldom seen one that is so crisply detailed. It's very nice. We've got all the various different timings, timing. I was going to say timing chains, but they're timing belts, aren't they? Yeah, and we've got the end pieces there. They're lovely as well. Just stunning at every step. More detail parts for the engine in the main here. Some very tiny components, and then more timing belts. This sprue contains parts for the interior of the tank, so that looks like some form of seat. I recognise some of these. We've got the little dashboard there, some covers, some bracketry, electrical junction boxes, a couple of those. So again, we'll have to think about what we're going to do on wiring. We've got little hand levers, a little bit of flash on some of these parts, but nothing major. It's heavy seam really. Just keeps coming. This sprue contains interior parts again, some of the bigger ones. So we've got the turret floor there, which is really nicely done. I can see release fluid on it. We've got the radio set, some of the shell racks, transmission. That's part of the flooring. There's a big lump that goes in there. We've got some box bulkheads. This is the seat here, and look at the detail on the springs there. Dry brush that, it'll look stunning. Some parts for the guns, I think there. Fire extinguisher. All sorts of little bits and pieces. And the little oil can that we saw. Nothing much on the underside. That's the seat frames, obviously. Our next sprue out has some of the plastic spaced armour on, and when we were going through the instructions and I saw that we had plastic rather than photo etch, I thought, it might be a little bit too thick and we might have to replace it with photo etch. And my concern was that they would sort of narrow it at the end and it'd be thicker in the middle. But no, it is thin, the same thickness all the way through. This one's drifted apart a little bit, and you can see how thin that is. Inevitably, it's probably a little oversized, but from a scale point of view, that doesn't look out of scale, and I'm more than happy to use it. So that is really well done. We've got the jack block here, which doesn't have much in the way of texture on it. So we might want to do something with that. But lots of tiny parts, little handles. If you can clean those up, you don't need to make your own, so that's great. Looks like we've got a little bit of sink on the machine gun cover there. Got the rear lights. We've got the little pop-out gun port covers there, and that looks like the bracketry for the spaced armour. All very nice. So, more interior detail for the tank. We've got the fans, which are nicely depicted. I mean, you can see right through those. So, very nicely done. Lots of small components, pipe work and bits and pieces. A little bit of flash on some of the parts, but on the whole, not bad at all. More timing chains. We've got this item that goes next to the engine. I'm not quite sure what it is. And then we've got the fan boxes there. All sorts of brackets and bits and pieces. All very nicely done, as always. Again, I think mainly internal parts here. We've got the little viewport for that you put your head against when you're looking out. You've got the bit of flooring that the turret floor sits and rotates in. So like the extension piece that goes around it, some interior bulkhead parts, some pipe work. Yeah, and again, I think in the main the ejector pins are hidden. The next two sprues deal with the drive sprocket. So we've got an inner and an outer. Detail is lovely. You can see the bolt heads clearly. The teeth are nice and sharp. The gates are on the teeth, so you can clean that up quite easily. It's always nice when they do that. It tends to be the common way these days. Got a little bit of flash blocking that hole just there, but it's just a tiny amount, just pierce that through, scrape it out, and then we've got the cover there for the gears behind it, which is nicely done as well. So we have 2 of those. So our next sprue is dealing with the main gun, the top plate, the base of the turret, and some other structural parts. There's a bit of flash again, but it's only minor. It's just scrape it off. There's nothing there causing us any problems particularly. We've got handles and bits and pieces, again, need a little bit of a clean up. I'm wondering if this mould has slipped a little bit because there's quite a heavy seam on the sprue, and we're seeing that go through the parts, and we haven't seen much in the way of seam on the parts until this one. You can see there some quite heavy seam on that, and that seems to be running through. It's on that part there. Doesn't appear to be on the inside of the ring of the turret though, thankfully. And look at the detail on that. That won't be seen at all, but it's there. So if you want to show it with the turret off, upside down, hung in the air off the gantry crane, you can do that. It probably wouldn't take the turret weight, I wouldn't imagine, but the detail is just breathtaking. Little power leads there, or whatever they are, electrical leads of some type. It's just so nice. Several different types of gun muzzle, which have been slide moulded, so they're nice and hollow, although 1 or 2 of them are a bit flashy in the end and will need a drill out. And then we have our machine gun there, which is really nice as well. On the next sprue we have the turret roof, which is got some lovely detail and a really nice weld seam on it. We've got more exterior panels. Again, lovely detail on the openings and the bolts there. And then this is the floor pan, and just look at the detail on that. Again, you aren't going to see that unless you're modelling it upside down, but it's all there, absolutely all there, as it is on the inside as well. So we've got a little escape hatch there, and you can see it there. And if I hold it up to the light, I can see that they're perfectly aligned. So it's all accurately done. It's really nice. Brackets there for the spaced armour. And we don't have much in the way of seam on it, so I think the last sprue was slightly slipped, whereas this one is good again. We've got some slide moulded parts there. Look at the towing hook. It's really nice. Yeah, I can't get over how well detailed this kit is. You know, it stands up with some of the brands that you'd expect, like TACOM and Rifle models. You'd expect them to be great, but actually this is easily as good, maybe even better. Okay, the next sprue out is to do with the gantry crane, and we've got the top part of the gantry there. We can see with the cutouts to meet the legs, but that's a nicely moulded piece. We've got the wheels there, again very cleanly moulded, and the little rollers that run along the gantry, 2 parts. The detail that is on there is very, very nice. Lifting hook has really nice detail as well. Very happy with that. Very, very happy with that. Okay, on this next one we've got some of the upper works there. That's the inside part of the front mantle, so the gun will go inside there, the vision block, and that'll be the inside surface. We've got some vision openings and various other little tiny bits and pieces. Like everything else, crisply moulded, No issues with that at all.
So our next sprue is more tools. So we can see we've got the anvil there. We've got what looks like, yeah, that's the bit for the wooden toolbox. We've got a spray paint gun, various different spanners, another little oil can, plane, lump hammers and axes and smaller hammers and jacks. So you've got all sorts of bits and pieces there that could be used for your diorama, not just laid out on the table. They could be resting on the tank, they could be all over the place. So much potential with this kit. This sprue contains mainly parts for inside of the turret, so we've got all sorts of bits for the gun, and the shell capturing bag looks quite nice. Seen better, seen worse. Machine gun as well is in there, and some various levers and boxes and stuff. So yeah, again, no issues, just simply lots of little parts to build up. The sprue that contains the other mudguard, we've already seen one, also on this one contains the framework for the spaced armour, more brackets, so many brackets, but all nicely done, just as the other one was. So the next sprue, I've actually got 4 of these, and these make up the A-frame legs for the gantry crane. So we've got some very nice depicted steel wheels. We've got a crank for adjusting it. We've got locking pins already moulded in place. And we have half of a girder. So if you put 2 halves together, you get a full length girder. So that's how that'll work. Some very nice gears moulded there. More hooks, small hook this time. All sorts of bits and pieces, which we got. That's going to go on the top of the gantry there, a big long locking pin. So really nice, well thought out. So I'm not going to open this, but we know we've got 22 strips of individual track links, and they do look very, very nice. I'm trying to see. We've got solid guide horns, so you could get aftermarket ones if you wish, but personally I'd stick with them myself. So my next item out is the actual diorama base. They're quite flexible because they're vac formed, so you do need to fill them. I tend to fill them with hard foam, as you'll see in my Tiger diorama. But the detail on here is really nice. So you've got this muddy road. This is where the wall would have been on the original diorama base, but we've got bits of wood, cans, bricks or masonry knocking around, which can all be painted up and picked out, and then you've got lots of different track patterns in there. Now they also supply you with a strip of plastic, and it's a bit strange this. The strip of plastic is put down so that you've got a place to put your 2 girders for the gantry crane. So your tank would end up sitting in between the 2 girders, and that's how they sort of utilize this. But they've given you this strip of plastic, which actually isn't straight, so it will need tidying up, but it's also exactly the same width as this bit that you've got to cut off the back. So they could have just told you to cut that off the back and save themselves a couple of pence. So our very last plastic parts are the clear parts, most of which are vision blocks. We do have some headlamp lenses if you decide to use them, and that looks like binoculars on the end there. They are very, very clear. Yeah, they will need some clear blue or clear green. I'd have to check my references, but they'll need something in there to tint them. But very nice they are too. So we get a little bag which contains 2 different sizes of chain, one big link, one small link. That's the operating chain, and that's the actual lifting chain, both of which will need some form of painting and weathering to look authentic, but it's really nice that they've included them. And we've also got 2 frets of photo etch. So the larger fret has bits on it for the tank. So we've got some interior details, control wheels, bits for the smoke discharges, chains, straps and bits and pieces. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to add a little bit of detail, so that's lovely. And then the smaller one is all associated with the tools. So we've got some of the hinges for the toolbox lids, a number of etch tools. Not quite sure what those are. I'm sure we'll work out or what that long strip is. And that there is a screwdriver. And then finally we have a decal sheet that's been specifically done for the diorama box for this kit. It references the kit number and it says repairing of Panther 4 Ausf H, big set, so we know it's deliberately done for that. And a lot of the markings are for the shells in the tank. And then we've got some of the bigger markings, so we've got red bear, green bear, depending on which one I do. We've got some of the dials for inside the tank, turret markings again, and then other little sort of warning signs and bits and pieces that might be in the tank. So quite a lot of decals actually. So when you look in, it is going to look really authentic, really, really authentic. So there you have it, the Miniart repairing of a Panther 4 Ausf H diorama, big set, huge number of plastic sprues and a massive part count. What is my first impressions? I think wow is how I'd summarize it. In many ways this is typical Miniart. It's a great, well thought through product with lots of detail with the modeler in mind. The instructions are, again, typical Miniart. They're busy, they're comprehensive. You need to take some time to divide them up a little bit, but they will get you where you need to be. I think the thought process behind it is really good. You've got everything you want and everything you need in one box, so you don't have to go out and get a load of aftermarket for this. If you wanted to put the side skirts on, that would be doable, but to be quite honest, you've got so many options with this. What you have disassembled, what you have opened, what you have lying where is all down to you as a modeler. So no 2 dioramas are going to be the same. I think it looks absolutely lovely. Being able to have the engine swinging around, it's a good way of showing the engine off. It's a good way of showing the interior of the tank off. So it's a great idea that's been very well executed. Now, as always with Miniart, there is a little bit more cleanup than you might get with some other modern brands, but I personally really quite like the Miniart plastic. It's not difficult to work with. It can be a little bit fragile, particularly on thin parts. So those little circular parts that are very thin that need cleaning up around the coupler, for example. You're going to have to be very gentle with those that you don't snap them. But you shouldn't really have any significant issues with any of that. There are some bits that are not included, so tow ropes, this bit of rope here, this is all stuff you're going to have to add, but it's minor stuff really. This becomes a very, very large project, and when you consider how much this retails for, it's an utter bargain. So the retail price of this in the UK is somewhere between 70 and 80 pounds, not much more than the price of a full interior tank by any other manufacturer. I can't imagine Tamiya being able to put these elements together from different kits and come up with a price tag under £80. I really couldn't see that doing it. I think Miniart kits are always good value for the time it takes to put them together, because of the high part count, which allows them to do very detailed moulding, and you get a very lifelike build experience and a very immersive experience. I think there is no better bang for your buck when it comes to 1/35 scale than Miniart, quite honestly. So if they've got subject matter that you're interested in, and obviously a lot of it is ex-Soviet Union stuff that they make, so they don't cover everything, but they have some very interesting subjects. So if they've got what you want, I think a Miniart kit's always a good option personally. That is an epic kit, and at some point we'll have a look at building it, but I have some dioramas already on the go, and I know that Robert Rims Models is currently building this, so you'll be seeing this on YouTube soon. So this is going to go away for a little while and let the dust settle and let it, you know, disappear for a year or two off people's radar, and then I'll bring it back and show everyone what I can do with this. So I'm looking forward to it, but it's not happening soon. I have other dioramas in my pipeline. I hope that was interesting. If you're in the market for one of these, they're definitely worth getting. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.